Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting in just a few minutes.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting in just a minute or two. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the seminar series titled Historical Tropes and Contemporary Anti-Semitism. This seminar series brings out the perennial patterns and the phenomenon of anti-Semitism to shed light on the matter of why exactly it is the longest hatred. The aim of the seminar is to elucidate the millennial themes and the variations on those themes that bring out the essence of anti-Semitism, to expose and explain why the phenomenon is at once ancient and modern, and 3, to impart a deeper understanding of how what was once the scandal of anti-Semitism morphs into a fashionable anti-Semitism, and 4, to enable participants in the seminar to recognize the phenomenon in all its subtle manifestations and to seek ways of responding to it. Themes to be examined include the anti-Semitic appropriation of the truth, the blood libel, purity of blood, the drive for redemption or salvation, the invisible and ubiquitous evil ascribed to the Jews, and more. This seminar series will bring out the implications of the theological and ideological themes of anti-Semitism, both historical and contemporary. In the end, the series will situate contemporary anti-Semitism within the eternal concepts of ethical demands and imperatives. It will pose the ethical questions that implicate each of us who encounters the phenomenon. The question puts to the firstborn of the first human, where is your brother and what have you done? So today we have the honor of having Dr. Vladimir Ze'ev Khanin. He's one of the leading Israeli experts on the Russian Jewish community in Israel, the diaspora, and the Israel-FSU relations and politics. He received his PhD in political science from Moscow Institute for African Studies, the USSR Academy of Sciences in 1981. And in 1991, he completed postdoctoral studies in the Institute for Russian and Soviet Studies at the University of Oxford. He currently serves as the chief scientist, chief scholarly expert, senior advisor to Ministry on Research and Strategic Planning of the Israeli Ministry of Aliya and Integration. He's also an associate professor with the Department of Political and Middle Eastern Studies at Ariel University and lectures on political studies at Bar-Ilan University, Israel. He gave visiting courses and public lectures for the Israeli and FSU government, as well as lectures on politics and society in a few universities in Great Britain, the US, and FSU. He also served as a political commentator for the Israeli channel 9 TV, the Voice of Israel radio, and BBC Russian services. His interviews and articles often appear within various Israeli, American, European, as well as Russian and other FSU printed electronic media. So without further ado, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody. Shalom to everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And in the next 40 minutes, I will try to present some ideas and mostly some figures that will share the contemporary situation and maybe some roots, including those which we see in the Soviet time and maybe pre-Soviet time, and the implications on the contemporary anti-Semitic, philo-Semitic tolerance and the lack of tolerance trends in the contemporary Russian society and state. Let me know that we live at the moment not in an easy time of Russian military invasion in Ukraine. Meantime, we hear quite a lot of debate around the Jewish angle of this. Two sides are talking about impact on the relation to Jews. The Russian government, Russian leaders declare that they fight the anti-Semitic regime. The funny story is that this anti-Semitic Ukrainian regime, in the quotation marks, is headed by a Jewish president, a Jewish defense minister, a Jewish mayor of the capital, and Jewish leader of opposition. But who counts? Hopefully, it will not have an impact directly on Jews, but we should take this issue into account. But now we are talking about, at the moment, we are talking about the Russian society, and we have, let me share with you some ideas and notes concerning the basic trends in this field. Okay, so contemporary trends in anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the former Soviet Union in general, and the Russian Federation in particular, actually have, of course, historical roots. These historical roots we can see starting from the Moscow princedom of the first medieval Russian state until through the Russian Empire, until the end of the USSR, of the Soviet Union. We can have we know about such models like state or government, official anti-Semitism, religious, Russian Orthodox, but not only, including also Muslim and some other churches and streams, religious streams. We are talking about civic anti-Semitism, meaning discrimination and defamation of Jewish rights as citizens of their state, and as well as so-called бытовой antisemitism, like they say it in Russian. That means public anti-Semitism. In principle, all these trends we can see now. However, it's okay. It's acceptable to believe that contemporary Russia, as well as most of the other former Soviet states, are different countries. And official anti-Semitism, which was formally abolished by Mikhail Gorbachev on the peak of perestroika, is not a factor in the moment in the contemporary post-Soviet Jewish life. We can see their media anti-Semitism, this or that way, political anti-Semitism, and day-to-day, that means public anti-Semitism. But the situation now is completely different. Than it had been 30, 35, and more years ago. So according to the public knowledge, post-Soviet space is believed to be a secure island in terms of the hardcore anti-Semitism, in comparison with what we have in some other spaces of this world, in some way also in Europe and the Middle East. Well, as you can see here in this slide, a conclusion of ongoing research of the Levada Center, one of the most reliable institutions of public opinion research in Russia, and a liberal one. Unfortunately, they do not publish it now after the start of this war, the 24th of February this year. However, we have quite a lot of information from their previous research, and you can see here that this conclusion can be proved by figures according to their ongoing study within the 30 recent years. The Russian public, the view of the Russian public, or a view of the Russian public toward Jews, what in the process of improving. As you can see here, about only 10% express sympathies to Jews, more than 80% are positive and neutral views, and only fifth part negative views. As far as the hardcore anti-Semitism is concerned, the situation is not so bad. In spite of the fact that there are monitoring agencies account various anti-Semitic events, including anti-Semitic attacks or attacks on the basis of anti-Semitic intolerance. But in Russia, a number of cases in the recent 2.5 decades were accounted all in all in the whole Russia. Between 9 to 28. In 2016, as you see here, there were only 5 cases like that, and only one in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And of course, we are talking also about anti-Semitic vandalism, meaning attacks or vandalistic events against Jewish synagogues, Jewish community centers, Jewish schools, kindergartens, and so on and so forth. But in 2019 and in 2020, actually, 21, they also published, monitoring agencies also published this information. There were selected incidents, for 4 to 5 each year. That's very unfortunate, but it's impossible to talk about the huge wave on anti-Semitic attacks. In Ukraine, the situation is more or less okay as well until the beginning of this war. And I hope after this war will finish, the situation will improve even better. We hope so. Just to compare what is going on in some other places in the world, unfortunately, so the situation in contemporary Europe is substantially more problematic. We can say that, for example, just an example of their research of the Jewish Agency and INSS, Institute for Security Studies in Tel Aviv, which did the monitoring in the 5 European Union states, and they registered very unfortunate trends like anti-Semitic views becoming a part of the local mainstream, like anti-Semitic xenophobia became a part of not only marginal groups, but mainstream groups in the left and the right wing. Anti-Israeli discourse also becomes quite an important part of this general ideas. And of course, all this supported and strengthened by the social media, unfortunately. A Jewish public also doesn't accept it as something terrible or something very problematic. Just to give you an example, which we enjoy here in Israel, the new wave of Aliya from Russia and Ukraine. I don't know yet, the sociological studies are just in the process of beginning at the moment, but one of the recent studies, relatively recent study that we did in the Ministry of Aliya and Integration shows that people that came to Israel in the recent 5 to 7 years, they speak about reasons of their Aliyah, of their immigration to Israel, as mostly the political problems in the country of origin or economic situation in their country. Very few of them, between 4 to 5%, declare that the major reason of their emigration from Russia, Ukraine, and other four post-Soviet states is actually security challenges or personal security challenges or anti-Semitism. So, is everything fine? On the first glance, we can say, yeah. Have a look at this slide, and you can see here that the very recent research that was done in 2020 actually about 90% of the Russian public, in the Russian Federation, view Jews with the sympathy and interest, or just without any special feelings. That means they either positively indifferent or positively declare their positive approach to Jews. 90%, much better than to Germans, to Ukrainians, to Chinese, Azerbaijanis, to so on and so forth. In principle, negative estimation summary of Russian public view in concern of Jews peaked to 21% in 2002, but actually in the recent years, it wasn't more than 5 to 10%. Well, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, if you will have a look on the Bagardus scale, as we often, as sociologists often use in order to have a look, in order to understand what is going inside these figures, we can see that the index, which 5 to 6, as you know, means the isolation and latent xenophobia, and 6 open xenophobia. According to the Jews, it's also decreasing, but still it's on the order between 4 and 5. We should take this point into account. So the situation is not so terrible, is not so dangerous, but something goes inside. You know, there is some sort of societal, internal, latent anti-Semitism that, according to the observers, can in certain period of time, like war, economic crisis, international conflict, disaster, and so on and so forth, according to the local observers and researchers, including myself, believe that at a certain point it could explode and go outside. Let me come back to also to one of the recent studies of our Russian colleagues that show that potential for xenophobia and including anti-Semitic xenophobia is gradually grew in the recent 30 years. And today they identify about 40% of the Russian public, which express in this or that way anti-Semitic sentiments. The diffuse xenophobia is more pronounced about respondents, as you can see here, that are in the psychological stress, frustration, or depression, and that's actually the phenomenon which we observe during the war economic crisis. That is why we very much afraid of that, of events like that. In Russia, in the recent years, especially in the recent 10 to 15 years, there is a substantial growth of the feelings like of share of people who believe in the superiority of certain nations, meaning ethnic groups in this case, like or dislike other nationalities, and so on. And there are share of these people, of these viewers among the elder generation is substantially higher than among the younger generation, uneducated among the educated, and so on. For instance, youngsters express these views in the quota, in the 23%, as you can see here, and 1/3 in the other groups. And the final indicator you can see, that it's lower among the relatively wealthy respondents and higher among the not so well-off poorest groups. If you will have a look at the data of 1997 and 20 years later, you can see that still a substantial number of people, a bit more than 40%, 25 years ago, and 50% now agree that there is true that Jews more loyal to their own interests than the country they live in. That means, according to these views, Jews are not patriots of their country they live in, and in any case, they can betray the country of they live in. It doesn't have a practical implication, but who knows? Well, as we understand. As you can see here, between almost one third of respondents in like a year and a half ago, they believe that Jews cannot be real patriots of the country they live in, and a growing number. Okay, the peak was in 2004, but it's also quite a substantial share now. They agree that ethnic Russians deserve certain privileges where other ethnic groups, including Jews, of course. At the moment, talking about anti-Semitism as a phenomenon, as the phenomenon in this case, where we all interested in. There is quite a substantial discussion. I will not retell all the stories and all this ideological and methodological conflicts and discussions between various groups of various NGOs, researchers, political figures, and so on. How should we define anti-Semitism? Whether it's the hate crime, or it could be also hate speech. But in principle, all those who support this or that approach, they agree on the common ground that if we are talking about anti-Semitism, the phenomenon, we should take into account all these sorts of events, meaning crimes inspired by Judophobia, incitements to hostility against Jews, media-sponsored anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitic stereotypes. In the media, we can see this promotion of negative public stereotypes in social media, in the traditional media, print, electronic, and so on and so forth. Incitements of the hostility against Jews may include hundreds of anti-Semitic or semi-anti-Semitic publications that printed annually in the Russian media, and of course, attribution to Jews hostile actions and dangerous attitudes. Quite a recent event, that's the Holocaust revision, and official or semi-official or quite widespread anti-Zionism. It's pretty new in Russia, we must say. Well, of course, it was the official Soviet propaganda, government propaganda in the Soviet times, but after the destruction of the Soviet Union, we all believe that it's already behind us. Unfortunately, it comes back, less in their official declarations or it's almost, we don't see it in the official government declaration, but public figures, including those who serve in the Russian government, permit to themselves to make this or that statements that could be defined even in the Soviet times as the pretty anti-Zionist and anti-Israeli. Political anti-Semitism includes playing Jewish card in politics. We saw it a lot in the recent years. Hopefully, the current Russian-Ukrainian war will not escalate at this point. Anti-Semitism, of course, is a flag of radical right and radical left movements, blackmailing of political enemies as Jews or those who are sympathized to Israel rather than the country they live in, bureaucratic anti-Semitism, and of course, Jewish aspect of Russian-Ukrainian crisis. You can see here that one of the results of that is, let me put it this way, the skepticism of the Russian public that a Jew could be a president of their country one day. On the other hand, let me open the brackets, more or less the same figures we saw in the recent years in Ukraine, including in the year 2020, or most of the Ukrainian public believed that that a Jew should not be president of their country, which never stopped them from voting for Mr. Zelensky at the same year. So we should take this point carefully, but that's what we see, at least in concern of these figures. One of the unfortunate contemporary implications of the historical tropes of traditional Russian anti-Semitism is actually belief, which shared by a substantial part of the Russian public, is that the Jews quite often responsible for anti-Semitism by themselves. One of their declarations in the media, in the talkbacks to one of the Russian majors, is the declaration like anti-Semitism is the result of the Semitism. That means Jews are struggling for the rights and for the interests of their own people rather than interests of the other citizens of the state, and that promotes anti-Semitism. So actually, this idea was shared by 30% in 1992, and it jumped to more than a half 25 years later. In 2020, I didn't put this figure for this data on this slide, but it mostly didn't change, unfortunately. There are all sorts of anti-Semitic prejudice. You can see it on the screen. I'm not going to retell it, but believe me, it's not lacking in the expressions of the public figures, in the media publications, and especially in the social media, and you're using this propaganda also for foreign policy interests and internal politics interests. Well, as far as this anti-Jewish prejudice are concerned, there is not much different from what we had or what we could observe in the historical literature. Apropos, talking about historical troopers. We can see here that the Russian public still believes that Jews do everything in their power in order to avoid more manual labor, the same as it was in 1990, just at the end of the Soviet Union. The same is correct in terms of the Russian public also at the moment. For Jews, money is more important than human relations. Tell it to Jewish philanthropy activists, but it doesn't matter, you know. More than half of the Russian public still believe in that, and being accused for anti-Jewish sentiments. People who believe the Jews should be accused and punished by themselves, you know, still 53% or more than 40% believe that Jews exaggerate their troubles and suffering. Well, going further, we may say that still, you know, the marginal, but still, if taking together, 69% at the end of the Soviet Union, but twice as less, but still more than 1/3 now. The situation is gradually improving, but not so well. They are ready to share one of the elements of the religious anti-Semitism, Christian anti-Semitism. The Jews should be blamed for crucifixion of Yeshua, of Jesus Christ. And quite a substantial number of people, and this number and their share is growing, believe that the access of Jews to government and public managerial positions in Russia should be limited. How can we compare to this 90% how it goes in hand in hand with this 90% that declare that their approach to Jews is positive or at least positive here, warmly or let's say without any special feeling like the other nations. It's difficult to explain, but probably it's something inside the soil of the Russian public. And researchers, historians, sociologists, and experts in other fields, like all you, ladies and gentlemen, probably should think more about it. Still, again, that the situation is not going to change so far, in spite that after the end of the Soviet Union, quite 30 years already passed, people still believe that Jews more loyal to their interests rather than to interests that the country they live. As you can see here, that more than 40% believe in that. Fortunately, only 12% now, a little bit more than 10%, believe that it will be better that Russia will get rid of their Jews. I'm not sure that if for any reliable sociological study would have been done in the times of the Soviet Union or in the times of the Russian Empire. I believe that figures will be much more substantial. Today we can say that it's marginal, but these marginal figures is the whole core, reflect the whole core of the anti-Semitism or barriers of the anti-Semitic expressions or feelings among the Russian public. Our colleague Lev Gudkov, academic director of the Levada Center, suggested three models or three groups within the Russian public in concern of the anti-Semitism. He's talking about ideological or doctrinal anti-Semitism or anti-Semitism proper. According to him, only 6% of the Russian public share this view. About 30%, substantially more, according to him, enjoy so-called traditional, archaic, or tribal anti-Semitism. That means something that goes back to day-to-day anti-Semitism of the Soviet and pre-Soviet time. That, according to him, and many of us share that view, this view together with him, actually believe that it has very much to do with the fact that Russia did not succeed to establish their society as the national society. Russia is not nation state. According to this point of view, Russia is something between a traditional Eurasian state and empire. And we see it now, actually. And even bigger share of barriers of conservative nationalist or anti-modernization anti-Semitism. I will not reread it. I think you will. You see it on your screen. What is the definition and what is the functional type? Is to maintain, which means to maintain the positive self-image on their own ethnic groups, grip of the expense of the other groups. That means anti-Semitism as the form to as a tool to strengthen their own superiority and their own ethnic identity. That is why we are talking, as I said, about three groups of or three models of anti-Semitic feeling and expression. That means the hardcore anti-Semites, between 8 to 20%, depends on the situation. The immediate surrounding of this group that share routine prejudice, stereotypes that humiliate the Jews, and the bigger, that means the next round, that actually, according to the sociological studies of the recent 30 years, can be this or that way applied to about 60% of the Russian public, actually they reflect the external diffuse and weakly expressed anti-Semitic feelings, or mainly of the so-called public or day-to-day anti-Semitism. I'm about to finish. I have 5 minutes left for my presentation before we open round of the questions and answers. But let me show you at least something, some information, some notes from our recent sociological study that was done in 5 countries of the former Soviet Union: Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, and Central Asia, Kazakhstan, first of all. How we were talking in the previous 35 minutes about what is the view of the Russian non-Jewish public in terms of Jews, and what is the situation and historical roots of the situation in Russia now, and what Jews, how Jews feel about that by themselves. We can see here that on the first glance, the situation is not so difficult and not so terrible as it could be, taking into account the figures that were presented by me a few minutes ago. But still, although 22%, a fifth of the Jewish public there, believe that anti-Semitism in their city and country substantially decreased, 40% believe that it increased. Vis-a-vis the opinion of the Jewish public in European countries, it's much less, but still it does exist. About 40% believe that there are no visible changes in either side. It's a good question. What do they mean? I believe that people at the age of 30 and more compare it with the Soviet times. So it's a bad piece of news. If there is no visible changes to either side, the youngsters most probably say about it, meaning comparing it with the recent years. So the time of after the end of the official anti-Semitism, we can see it probably as a positive expression. But that means it's a positive expression, but, okay? Of course, it is true as far as Jews cannot be separated from the general public. Still, in all these anti-Semitic events or anti-Semitic crime, in the most cases that were registered by the monitoring agencies, actually the victims of these crimes were easily definable people, people that were easily definable as Jews, especially rabbis, or according to their dressing, or people that came to synagogues and from synagogues after the Saturday Shabbat services, and so on and so forth. So you can see here that the more religious people are, on one hand, they believe that since the government and society permits them to practice Judaism, practice the Jewish religion without any obstacles, the situation is fine. And that is why many of them believe that anti-Semitism is substantially decreased, and less so people who do not practice. But many of them believe that it's very hard to say at the moment. Still, we can see that both in the terms of the Russian public, non-Jewish, and in terms of the Jewish public, the situation is rather good than bad. But historical troops and troopers and their contemporary implications, if we will go to if we will take into account the personal experience of the anti-Semitic attacks that 25% were declared, explained us that in this or that way, they were part of it or target of it. And about 1/3 heard about it and know people who were victims of these attacks. We should take into account, as Shakespeare said, not everything is fine in their kingdom. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Too many figures, too many conclusions, but meantime, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that terrific presentation. We have a few questions. First question is from Marcia Stein. She said, since the refugees leaving Ukraine and Russia are not doing so due to anti-Semitism, how do you think they feel about coming to Israel? Those who left because of anti-Semitism in the USSR have been here for decades and are an important part of Israel. Will the new refugees want to remain in Israel and live Israeli lives, or will they eventually want to go elsewhere?
Okay. I see this question in the chat, so let me have a look once again on it. Doing so, well, I think that majority of people who flew from Ukraine and Russia, by the way, that already here in Israel, or some of them prepare for their Aliya to Israel, mainly from Russia. There are quite a substantial jam in their Israeli embassies and consulate delegations that all their force, all the attention is put to bring Ukrainian Jews who are interested to come in Israel as soon as possible. So I believe that their motivation to come to Israel is much more about personal danger or a war actually stimulated many of those who hesitated, were sitting on the fence, hesitated whether to emigrate or not to emigrate, and if to emigrate, where to. Probably this stimulated their decision to leave Ukraine and to come to Israel rather than the other countries of the world. According to the same research, which I quoted, about 40% of our respondents in Ukraine said that in 2019 and 2020 said that they're considering emigration, but not sure, and 25% said that they're actually decided to emigrate. And among all these two groups, about 45% said that they're, well, in case they emigrate, they go to Israel. So probably those who hesitated, as I said, already made their decisions and already made Aliya. But I believe that anti-Semitism is actually, or fear of return of the Soviet-style anti-Semitism is not, at least it's not the major reason.
Okay, thank you for that. We also have a question from Joseph L. asking, how do you explain the Jews who say there never was and isn't any anti-Semitism now in Russia? This seems very strange.
Well, yes, we see these people among two groups. I mean, these opinions. Most of the bearers of this or holders of these opinions are actually concentrated into two groups. Among the youngsters, for them, Soviet-style anti-Semitism is a part of the history. Okay, their parents are talking about it, are telling this, but those who prefer to stay in Russia 30 years after the end of the Soviet Union probably believe that there are all sorts of anti-Semitic indications. It's something they can live within. That is why their children actually that do not have obstacles or barriers for their career in any field most probably believe that that the situation that was in Russia always. We have sometimes students among the recent Olim that come to Israel and I'm talking, for example, about my students in the seminar of Russian-speaking Jewry in the universities that I teach, that ask me some things that to my generation are obvious. They don't remember all the details about Lenin, Stalin, and all these guys. We can say thanks God they don't know anything about it. But probably those who stayed in the former Soviet Union and stayed in Russia believe that it's more or less the situation like it was now, and what was in the history should be left in history. Another group which held such opinions are actually well-established members of the well-established Jewish business and managerial elite, and some of the Jewish intellectuals that actually believe that they are much more Russians than Jewish, if they believe that they are Jewish at all. But as we know, in problematic times, the points of the history, many of these people come back to their roots. I hope one day we just start research on the very recent Aliya. Very recent Aliya, you know, it's less than a month. It's just four weeks. Its history is about 4 weeks long. Yeah, maybe we will have we will see that some of these people change their mind, but it not happens so quickly.
Okay. And you alluded to this as a potential issue in the beginning of your presentation. But what do you think are the implications or potential implications of Ukraine's president and mayor being Jewish on, global anti-Semitism, or even how people view the current conflict?
Well, it's very difficult to predict anything, and too early to make even preliminary conclusions. But meantime, no indications that this scenario, that means increasing of anti-Semitism, will realize. However, we have 3 points that we should pay attention to. One point is their president, Mr. President, Vladimir Zelensky, probably the most popular person in Ukraine at the moment, and the person that due to this war became a politician of the world caliber. According to what we can see now, according to the opinion polls that's still conducted in Ukraine, even in time of the war, as we can learn from the conversation with our Ukrainian colleagues, read Ukrainian media, first of all, social media and social networks, he is not accepted as such. For them, he is Ukrainian, a guy from Kryvyi Rog, national leader, and so on and so forth. However, Mr. Zelensky time and again stresses his Jewish origin. Yesterday, addressing to Israeli Knesset, he spent most of his time to compare the Ukrainian situation with the situation of Jews during the Holocaust. Not all Israelis were happy about it, as I might tell, but nobody blames him because he's leader of the nation under the fire. He's doing everything, uses any tool in order to draw international public attention and to get help. But at a certain point, especially if Ukrainian public will not be so happy with the results of the struggle after the end of this war, some people would decide to blame not just President Zelensky, but a Jew, Zelensky, who was the leader of the nation. Second point is the dissatisfaction of some of the Ukrainian public with the stand of Israel, with the side that Israel took in this conflict. On one hand, supported the accusation of Russia for its aggression on sending hospital, humanitarian aid, everything Israel is able to do to Ukraine, but on the other side, on the hand, did not openly declare that it took side in this conflict And we see now a sort of dissatisfaction in Ukraine in terms of Israel, which might have some impact. I hope it will not, but unfortunately it might help on the Jewish community of this country. But okay, that is just a hypothesis at the moment, rather than any even preliminary conclusion. I believe the situation at the moment is not so bad.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a few minutes left. If anybody has any more questions, you can either raise your electronic hand or send some more comments. So we'll give everybody a minute or so, see if there's any pending questions.
Okay. Well, if no other questions, I can say a few words more. We have like 5 minutes more, probably, yeah?
Yep, sure. Yep.
If you don't mind. I will add a few words about in concern of the Jewish opinion. In concern of the anti-Semitism, I guess that let us have a look here. Or maybe to pay more attention to this data. Maybe that will be an additional answer to the previous questions, whether Jews are afraid or should be concerned on anti-Semitism due to the results of the war. If we will have a look on the extended Jewish population of the former Soviet Union, including Ukraine, we can see that although that the share of so-called persons of a homogeneous Jewish origin, in most cases they're more elderly than, you know, their age is more advanced than the average public. So we can see here that they were the subject, the target of anti-Semitic attacks in 40%. I mean, 40% of them were like that. And in comparison to the 25% in the average, and only 14% among the second generation of the mixed marriages. This is the fact that should be also taken into account, which gives some indication to the picture. So we are talking about core Jewish population and extended Jewish population. Many of the persons that belong to the so-called extended Jewish population, that means descendants of the mixed marriages in the second and third generation, as well as people without Jewish roots, meaning spouses of Jews and persons of the Jewish origin. Many of them prefer to be inside the Jewish community rather than outside. To be a Jew in Ukraine and in Russia has a positive meaning at the moment, yeah? But in the case, like we say in Hebrew, b'zman ha'mashber, in the time of the crisis, it might change. I wouldn't say bin laila, within one night, but we should be careful while we are making the final conclusions. If you understand what I mean. Well, you remember some time ago, a few minutes ago, I said that religious people have estimated the level of anti-Semitism in their country in even more positive way than non-religious people, but still, if they declare that they were target of anti-Semitic attacks, almost twice as much, twice more than the average. I mean, twice more than non-religious, and 1.5 more the people that are unable to define their religiosity, whether they're religious or not. That means these people that probably would say that in day-to-day life they do not preserve the Jewish tradition, but from time to time they attend Jewish events and can see anti-Semitic graffiti on the walls of the synagogues, or even be the target of hate speech, if not the hate crime. This thing we should also probably take into account while talking about historical troopers and contemporary implications. Well, if any other questions?
We had a question from Joseph L. asking, what is Putin's attitude towards Jews?
Ian? What is the Putin attitude to Jews? Oh, well, good question. Until very recently, there was a general belief that Mr. Putin is Philosemite, not anti-Semite, anti-Semite at least. Well, some of commentators and observers believe that it's due to the fact that in his childhood, Jews took care of him, their sport trainers and their teachers, many of them very Jewish, and they're very kind to young Vladimir Putin. Some of them believe that that he belongs to the generation which is quite often express so-called civil anti-Semitism, meaning anti-Semitism on the contrary. That means they believe the Jews rule the world. They believe the protocols of their sages of Zion, but fortunately, and because of that, it makes sense to have a good relations with Jews and take to their side. I wouldn't buy it immediately, this concept, but this doctrine does exist. And finally, there is also a belief, a sort of a belief or an opinion that Putin believes that Jews have a widespread infrastructure in the world. Jewish organizations are important. They made impact on their on the decision-making process in many countries of the world and international organizations. So it makes sense to keep rabbis and Jewish community leaders close to the presidential office, to support them, to promote Jewish religious life, and through them to make an impact, to influence international public opinion and international organizations, as well as the state of Israel. This was correct, at least until recently. What would happen now, and whether anything will remain after this Russian invasion to Ukraine, we'll see. Well,
okay.
5 o'clock Israel time, if it's okay with you. So.
Yep, it's perfect timing. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks to all you guys for coming. Thank you.
Goodbye.